Thank you.
Yeah, so
I moved
anyways,
down from the North Coast, so I
Yeah.
still have some coast cred.
yeah, so I told people who couldn't make it tonight because they're watching the State of the Union or whatever that we would record it. So anyway, I'll be posting this up on YouTube in a couple of days. So how about Rala? You want to introduce yourselves or introduce yourself?
I will. I'm Rala. I'm with the Oregon League Conservation Voters and the 2040 Committee and the Oregon Coast Community Forest. So we're kind of sitting in to see what everybody's doing and try to make sure we all talk to each other as best as possible.
Great. How about Evan?
Hey everybody, Evan Hayduck, Council Coordinator for the Midcoast Watersheds Council here in Newport.
Great. And how about June?
I'm June O'Connor. I'm here in Walport. I'm with our local climate action group and have been collaborating with Martin and Bill for a few years now.
Great. Actually, I'm just sort of deliberately leading the elected officials last. I don't know why, but usually I put them up first. But Shannon, why don't you go next?
Hi there, I'm Shannon with Lincoln Soil and Water Conservation District, and I'm excited to be here to discuss the ways we can collaborate.
Great, thanks, Shannon. And Anne, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself? I think you might be muted, Anne. If not, okay. So I think since I've gone through all the non-elected or folks not running for office, I'll now go through the elected officials and those running for office. So Casey, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Oh, good evening, everyone. I'm Casey Miller. I am the Public Information Officer for Lincoln County in the County Commissioner's Office, and I am running for County Commissioner position 1 as well. So good to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. And Greg, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Greg Holland, Mayor of Walport, running for County Commissioners position 1 also.
Great. And Susan?
Yes, I'm Susan Waukee, Mayor of Lincoln City. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. And Katie?
Hi, everybody. Sorry to be a couple minutes late here. I was, I shouldn't say running back from Lincoln City, but obeying speeding limits coming back from Lincoln City. So happy to be here. I'm Katie Jacobson. I'm one of the Lincoln County Commissioners and kind of put Martin up to this. So thank you for doing this, Martin.
Oh, more than happy to do it, Katie. So anyways, you know, a lot of folks like a Zoom meeting not to last more than an hour or so. So anyways, this is just sort of a real basic, real quick run through, hitting just sort of the top end of some of these grants. And you know, certainly we're going to be having a lot more meetings in this process, but this is just sort of to get people excited about this. You know, one of the reasons why I'm doing this is because I think pretty much everyone here knows that, you know, right now us environmental yahoos are asking Lincoln County to put a climate straw vote on the ballot in November. And to me, one of the best ways to achieve our environmental goals is also to show how you can do that economically. So anyways, that's what my particular interest is in this, is showing that we can both work towards becoming carbon neutral in the future, hopefully by 2035, which obviously is a stretch, but at the same time, you know, we can move in that economic direction. So anyways, up here on the screen, I just have, you know, actually we're sort of pretty much right on schedule. You know, we've done the introductions and then just sort of a brief introduction of the bipartisan bill. And then we'll just sort of be blasting through a lot of these grants, since, you know, so some of them are, appropriate, for your particular area, and others of them aren't though. But this is just a very small handful of the different grants that are going to be coming out here in the future. And let me briefly bring up. This is the monster. I think it's, yeah, so it's 465 pages, and this was put out by President Biden, the White House. And what it has is it lists several hundred grants and opportunities from the bipartisan infrastructure bill that the U.S. Congress passed, last fall. And so some of them are, related to the environment. Some of them are more just sort of, just paving a way and whatever. And so, anyways, there's a lot of stuff in here. My particular interest is just simply in those areas where, where the environment, where we can mix in both economics and the environment, though. But that's certainly not. So certainly not all the grants. A lot of them are just simply just pave a way, though. But anyways, what we're going to do now is just sort of go through some of the grants. And to me, I mean, there's just a real possibility for us to bring in, actually tens of millions of dollars to our rural county. And so the first one I was going to hit, and people can jump in and ask questions as we blast along. But the first one I was going to hit is the transportation related grants, the climate related grants. And okay, here we go. So one of them that's going to be coming up pretty quickly is this clean school bus program. And obviously this falls into the bailiwick of the Lincoln County School District, but we should definitely, try to get them excited about that. Another one is low or no emission bus grants. I might mention, Bill and I were talking with I guess he's the CEO or the owner of a company called The Good Company based over in Eugene. And we talked with him just a couple hours ago around noon. He is an incredible font of knowledge, though, and he's certainly quite willing to help us out. And so anyways, and then here's another thing, charging and fueling infrastructure grants. This is the Federal Highway Administration, 1.25 million. NOFA, that stands for Notice of Funding Opportunity. And that to me is a really, these are all, so some of these grants are out here right now to bid upon, and others of them, will be coming out like in the next year or so. But so anyways, I just want to briefly show you one particular grant. And while I navigate over to that, this is the RAISE grant, and I'm really trying to get particularly the cities and the counties interested in this grant, because this is a grant that's coming up right now. And with this particular grant, okay, so here it is. I have so many screens here, and sometimes my computer goes out, and that's why you see I also have another backup name here. So this is the RAISE grant, and it stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure, Sustainability and Equity Grant. And in one sense, it's sort of a paving and building roads, but it also has a lot of nice elements in there. You can do culvert work in there, and there's a real focus on doing climate related jobs. And so, a lot of the cities here, they obviously always need transportation funds. And so, I just, I sent this over to the city of Newport, and, Commissioner Jacobson has this too. And so this to me is, it's a really great grant. Another nice thing about this, in one sense, you can say it's sort of bad, but it has a deadline coming up pretty quickly of April 14th. Now, there's $1.5 billion in this grant, of which 750 million are for rural areas, and the other 750 million are for urban areas. And what's interesting is for urban areas, there's a 20% cost match, but as I've read through this grant for rural areas, there's no there's no cost match on it though. So. And then another aspect of this grant is, I believe it's like they've set aside $75 million for counties and other local entities to just to apply to get funds, so that they can apply for raised grants in the future. So to me, I mean, even though this deadline is coming up pretty quickly, this is a really great grant that has a lot of environmental components. And if we can jump in and get it, start getting some money here flowing into the county, that would be really great. Okay, so that's the transportation grant cycle. And now we're going to go into the watershed. And so at this point in time, I'm going to pick on Evan, but let me first bring up this next grant. Oops, that's not the one I want. Yeah, when you have multiple screens, it gets a little bit confusing. But
Martin, it looks like Katie's got her hand raised. Might want to.
oh yeah, go ahead, Katie. Just start talking.
Sure. The last grant you just talked about, the transportation one. I'm sorry, I'm just finishing my dinner here, which is why my camera was off. But is that, you said there was no cost match, but is that like you have to be shovel ready on that, or can you use it for planning, like planning and doing the actual project, or is it just shovel ready projects? Do you know?
It's actually both.
Okay.
Yeah, there's 75 million set aside for planning.
Oh, that's that separation, that 75 million you were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's anyways, that to me is, particularly because I think there's going to be, there's going to be a lot of rural communities. They don't really have the capacity to go after these grants though. And so that's why I think we're really in sort of a good position if we, start to get really serious about going after these grants. So there's a number of different types of watershed grants. And so anyways, Evan, why don't I let you talk about this particular one and
Sure.
get a drink of water.
And get a little break. I know how hard it is to have all the pressure on you during one of these type of meetings, Martin. So you're doing a good job so far. So yeah, I kind of took a little dive into this. I've got some questions that I think I'm going to follow up. I've read through it all, and I'm not sure. Actually, right there, if you could leave it there for a second, Martin, it talks about new watershed groups and existing watershed groups, and I for all intents and purposes, believe that Midcoast Watersheds Council is an existing watershed group, but I don't know if that it fits the exact definition of this, since this is through Bureau of Reclamation. So a lot of this is on water quality and quantity, which is obviously something that we're very involved with helping with and working on. But this is just for phase one, and it's either kind of to build capacity of like a watershed group to work towards a plan and start planning restoration work, which is usually pretty hard money to come by. It's easier to get, obviously, money for projects that are on the ground, but kind of planning and prioritization and all that kind of idea is difficult. So I'm taking a closer look. Just from my initial read, it seems like it might be better for a group like, I think the recently formed Midcoast Water Conservation Consortium, which is, I think, City of Newport, Lincoln City, Waldport, Yachats, and Seal Rock water districts all working together to do water conservation. And I think they are about a year into that effort, kind of building off the water planning partnership work for the last 5 or 6 years, however long that's been going on. And because a lot of this is just kind of bringing the group together and engaging stakeholders and doing that kind of early planning work. So I'm going to maybe kick it over to some of them to see if they think it'd be something to fit for them. If Midcoast we have a board meeting this Thursday, so I am going to talk to our board to get some ideas on this, and it is a tight time frame with the end of March deadline here, but we like a deadline, and that kind of pushes us to work a little harder, so we don't mind that. But my thought for this is a big part of what Midcoast brought, and we're kind of voicing during the water planning partnership, is natural storage and beaver ponds and bringing beaver back on the landscape, and how they can hold a lot of water without having to build a dam or build water tanks. And I think that my read through this would kind of fit that if we picked, for instance, Beaver Creek, which has recently developed a water intake with Seal Rock Water District. If we kind of came up with a plan to really kind of focus efforts to bring back beaver in that watershed, which help with water quality and water quantity concerns and low flow conditions in the summer, I think it could be competitive. So I think it's a cool chance to get some planning money, which, again, as Katie kind of alluded to, is not the easiest thing to get. So we're going to take a little closer look here with our board here this week, and maybe kick it to those water partners as well, to see if they're interested.
Yeah, and so actually Evan is bringing up a really great idea, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this is really just to really sort of start this networking process, just so that other groups that aren't here tonight, I'll just sort of pick on the Lincoln County School District, not that I invited them though, but there's just a lot of different grant opportunities that different cities, towns in Lincoln County can apply for. And and Evan was talking about this a little bit, and I think it's important to do is to go back here to the top where it so with these grants, one of the key things is who the eligible applicants are. And a lot of times, it's either city, state, so some type of public entity, but like this particular one, it specifically names watershed groups, and there's a couple of grants we're going to be covering tonight that specifically include nonprofit organizations, community organizations, and so that's one of the key things here is with each of these grants, you have to look at who the eligible applicants are. Yeah, so Katie, actually just go ahead and shout out.
Okay, just trying to be polite. Hey,
no need
Evan,
to be polite.
Does your group, because on this specific one, the eligible applicants are clearly watershed groups, does your group have capacity to take something like this on? I mean, it sounds like you're talking to your group, but you think you have capacity. Okay. I think with every grant, maybe we go through, it'd be nice to kind of see who might have capacity, because I think that's going to be one of our biggest barriers is who can actually do it. So I'm glad to hear that, your watershed council.
Well,
has
and yeah,
Yes.
we've recently had discussions about, because we're working with a bunch with BLM and Forest Service and kind of their pots of money for a lot of this infrastructure stuff, and we're already talking about adding staff with the kind of hope that they would help
Yeah.
get some of this stuff on the ground, and we've already kind of built up to 3.25 full-time staff now, which we were kind of 1 to 1.5 for a long time. So we both our staff, and obviously we have a really active board too, who does a lot of work with us too. So
Yeah, good. I'm glad to hear that. I actually think a lot of times the writing of the grant is the easy part. I mean, I even think that there's probably money lying around at the county to help people write the grant, but that is not the actual work. That's hard. It's the doing of the actual project, and that's the capacity piece that I think needs to be talked about as we go through. All right, thanks.
Absolutely.
Evan, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Seeing as how, water is becoming more and more scarce in these parts, and I heard you talking about, water gathering, like with beaver ponds and stuff. Do you have other plans like building reservoirs? And also this would tie in, I think, to Lincoln County in terms of having some kind of program where people could have cisterns and stuff like that, start to work. I'm wondering if that's in the purview of your
The kind of the built environment of it, the reservoirs, water tank, that's not really our world. We're really on the obviously the restoration side and kind of restoring watershed function and process type side of things. But we do have some kind of poke our nose in some of this stuff, and water conservation is one thing that we do work with groups with, and that's what we were pushing through the whole water planning process. And like rainwater catchment systems, we're going to be installing one of those at our nursery there in Beaver Creek that we operate with state parks, and we're hoping to kind of build our education related to water conservation and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely the bigger water infrastructure stuff, that's not our world.
And Bill, the county has a funding request into the state right now with hopefully some internal cost match from ARPA funds to start doing a engineering study for Elk City for just that, which is better water storage and actually creating a water district potentially.
Wow.
Because they're all on private spring fed systems or wells, and it is not a long-term, it's not going to work. So anyways, my goal is that as we take these planning grants from the state, we can do the planning grant for one community, circle back around with the legislature or these types of funds and get that actually built, and then do another one and just kind of keep going. So Elk City was kind of the first that we're trying with this process other than Otis, but we do have that in works, at least from a planning end.
Can I ask a question? Excuse my ignorance. What do the beaver do? How are the beaver instrumental in gathering water for?
So I'll be really brief because I don't want to get too sidetracked here. But essentially, if you have beaver all spread through the landscape, they're making ponds that are holding water, and that actually can just hold more water in the upper watersheds rather than all that water kind of rushing out. So during the winter, obviously, we have plenty of water around, but summer we get really low flow conditions here on the coast. So imagine just a watershed stocked with a bunch of ponds that are slowly dripping water out of them over the summer, which boosts that low flow, cools the temperature of those streams when you have more water in it, compared to just somewhat altered system with no beaver dams, that all the water is just gone by the summer because it's all just not being held back and washed.
So they're making cisterns, in other words.
Yeah, essentially they're doing natural reservoirs if we just allow them to do the work.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so so Evan obviously talked about a very specific grant, and as you can see up here on the spreadsheet, there's a whole series of other grants, water recycling, water smart grants, watershed and flood prevention operations, National Estuary Program grant, water quality improvement, so forth and so on. So I mean, there's, Bill, you were asking about some other questions, and so anyways, there's just, the key thing really is that there's just simply a lot of possibilities out here that, we should get really serious about going after. I have a question, Martin.
I have a question for the general group here. Can I put it in here real quick? I'm wondering if there's, substantial grant writing place, in place, writers in place in any of our governmental bodies or in any of our organizations like the, Watershed. Do those exist? Are they on the payroll somewhere, or do we have to hire them separately? Does anybody know? Because it seems like we need a big grant writer for all this, or central something.
I mean, I can talk to the county. I know that Evan, I think, writes his own grants. I mean, I think there's capacity that you guys have that you do your own, but the county does not have a grant writer on staff. There is different contractual grant writers that we've used in the past. I shouldn't say that. We have one kind of on staff at HHS, but she writes specifically for public health. And then there's a contractor that the sheriff's office and parole and probation has used in the past. And then there's some contractors we used early on in COVID, but mostly it's me. That's who typically writes the kind of more government grants. I did all the grant writing for Otis for a lot of their recovery work, other than nonprofits who did their own writing for direct needs and stuff. So we really don't have, like I said, on staff grant writer that grants for more kind of like general government. They're more specific to certain things that departments want to go after. And I don't know I couldn't speak for cities, so maybe Susan or others can talk to about that. But again, I would just say it's not so much the writing. I actually think there's decent enough grant writers in the community. There's a whole bunch of them at HMSC that we've borrowed for various projects before in the community that are very good at it. It's the management of the actual program once it comes that straps us internally. We can only take so much on from a financial, contractual, and workload. So that's the piece that we always have to think about, is not so much who's going to write it, it's who's going to manage that. And do we have kind of the fiscal people in our fiscal office to manage that grant when it's there. Some grants you can take overhead and you can scrape the overhead, and then Evan's nodding. Yeah, he knows the drill. You can scrape the overhead and then use that for, like general personnel costs to give you that. Some grants let you directly write that in. Like if you need a program manager, you can pay for that. But it's also challenged. Like if there's a 5% or 10% overhead block on that, it can be really hard because that's not enough money to hire a person to manage the grant. So it just depends on what those specific funding pieces are. Sometimes some of the money coming out more recently from the federal government, I have noticed, is a little more equitable to small communities, and the fact that they're allowing some overhead, or they're allowing you to write in direct costs of managing it. Not all of them, but I have just seen that change a little bit in the last 24 months, maybe.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, so we're pretty much right on time. We'll in fact, might even be a few minutes ahead of time. So, the next category is energy efficiency and clean energy grants, and there's one particular, is actually this very first one that's listed, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. And this to me is something that we really want to get serious about going after. And and I forgot to just sort of mention one thing as an aside. About three or so years ago, our Newport Mayor Dean Sawyer screwed up and put me on the city's audit committee, and I was really surprised in the first year when we were going through the city's financials, because there's a special process for doing federal grants, and that the city of Newport did not have any federal grants. And that actually sort of shocked me, because I'm treasurer for a couple of nonprofits. And at any given time, particularly for this one other nonprofit, we have like 4 or 5 federal grants though. So anyways, but getting back here to these energy efficiency grants, these actually broaden out, and there's some specifically for nonprofits to improve their buildings and everything. And then there's, you can see one called down here, improvements at public school facilities, and energy improvement in rural and remote areas. And so obviously, on each one of these grants, you need to dig in, find out what the details are, when the grants need to be submitted. But certainly this is something that I think as we particularly reach out and work with other groups, that this can be just a potential source. And then there's a couple, and I'm sure OSU is quite aware of these. One is the Marine Energy Research and Development, and I'm sure OSU is certainly quite aware of this one. And then there's the National Marine Energy Center. So I don't know if OSU, and it's specifically limited to institutions of higher education. So OSU, might be specifically looking at that though. So, anyways, energy efficiency. I don't think there's any that are out here right now to bid upon, but they are going to be coming up. As you can see, the deadlines fall, third quarter 22, so forth and so on. So these are things just to keep in mind. The next category coming down into what I call, community fire protection hazardous fuel grants, and Commissioner Jacobson was talking about, writing grants for the Echo Mountain fire. And so here's a grant that the Forest Service is going to be putting out. Unfortunately, it's literally not for a year or so, but community wildfire defense grant programs. And, even though we used to think we lived in a coastal rainforest, this coastal rainforest is burning down now. And so this is something that, we really may want to take a look at pretty closely. And is Evan still online here? Did he? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Evan, because you work with the Forest Service. Do you know anything about, their hazardous fuel programs? You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I haven't talked specifically with the Forest Service. I know BLM was looking at some hazardous fuel management stuff because they had a lot of land up in the Cascades that burned during the fires too. So yeah, I don't know anything from the Forest Service specifically that they're going for any of those that I've heard about.
Yeah, I haven't heard from the Forest Service end. That's new to me. As part of being a disaster affected community, we could have gone after FEMA hazard mitigation grants, and we did go after some of those, but there is kind of a defensible space that you can go after within that hazard mit, and we didn't, because it requires like 10 years of code enforcement. I mean, like, you're writing people tickets if their shrubs grow too big. I mean, you have to show that you are making sure that is maintained over a period of time, or you have to give the money back. And from a county end, and it's for the whole county, not just an Otis. And we just felt like having to keep up code enforcement for that long, when only so much cost was allowed to go towards code enforcement, was not necessarily going to work, because people would have to be checking back. And, they wanted you to put liens on properties if people, discontinued doing that. And we just felt like maybe that was a little too heavy-handed for the role we wanted, but maybe some of these other ones are a little less enforcement driven.
Great. Okay, so let's go into the next category. Yeah, so actually we're really ahead of time. Here's a couple of carbon capture grants, and this is just a real long shot, but for those of you who know me, from time to time I do note how the GP facility in Toledo is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases of any manufacturing facility in the state of Oregon. And, and I also say in the same breath, it's important to keep the facility open because it provides a couple hundred primary jobs, and a couple hundred secondary jobs. I also say that, GP should become a better corporate citizen. And this particular program, this carbon capture large scale pilot program, there's a portion of it that's specifically directed towards manufacturing facilities, though. And so I've sent this off to the Toledo City Council Mayor Rod Cross and the others. They haven't responded to it yet, but anyways, I'm sort of hoping, particularly there's no deadline on this grant yet, but as we move towards making Lincoln County a more carbon neutral county, the GP facility really does need to clean up its greenhouse gas emissions. So as I said, that's a long shot, but maybe we get GP interested in that. And then the final one, the city of Newport apparently has a work session this evening. I know a couple of the councilors were interested in attending this, though. But as you all know, they've been trying to gather up money for the dam, and here's 3 particular grants that are related towards dam safety. So, anyways, but since there's not anybody from City of Newport here, I'm not going to really spend any time on this, though. So anyways, actually, we sort of blasted through this. I actually, one other thing I just sort of want to briefly show, and that's not to scare people off, but to I want to briefly show you grants.gov. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is sort of stop share for a little bit so I can better easily maneuver here. And I'm sure, Katie, you've obviously written grants or going through grants.gov before. And you have any thoughts on how challenging that is?
Well, I like it better than their system was before that, when you actually had to physically mail copies in by a certain date. So I will say that there's some improvement there, but it's still not necessarily user friendly, I would say. I mean, it's not great.
Yeah, that's actually, I myself have used grants.gov before when I used to work for a nonprofit, and then we used to I used to work over at OSU and I'd help prepare grants. But anyway, so here's grants.gov. It can be pretty challenging, but as Katie describes, there are some nice things about it. But anyways, what you can do is, you can go onto it. It's just grants.gov. And then I'll type in, just because we were talking about this a little bit earlier, the raise grants. And so you can type that in. And so here it pops right up here, the raise grant. And I'm not going to dig too deeply into this, though, but it has a bunch of information about it, and then here's the package which you can download. And so anyways, this is I probably for at least all the grants I've seen so far that I've looked at, I think most of them go through this particular funnel, this grants.gov, and it's certainly doable. So anyways, I just sort of wanted to show that for folks, that this is where you can go out and find grants, and then once again, just simply downloading this really massive building back better, or I guess it's building a better America. This document, you can just simply Google, and it's 465 pages, but there's and I pulled out, I think, 25 or 30 that I thought are relevant here for Lincoln County. So anyways, that's pretty much, we've actually sort of blasted through things. And
I have a question before we still have time here. You've listed a lot of stuff out there, and I'm just wondering, organizing this. I mean, you've done a beautiful job already, but where do we go from here? And it seems like it's going to take a cadre of folks to, I guess the first thing, given what Katie said, that to see if, in the first place, if we have the capacity to do what we are writing a grant for, and then from those that we think we can do, prioritizing some, because we don't have giant staffs of people. And when we were talking with Proudfoot, what was his first name? Joshua. Yeah. He said, the grant writing is really easy. He said it's the lining up all the stuff, getting all the people involved and all that, and having all your statistics and your all that stuff. And then the grant writing is just not to diminish I see Katie smiling there, but so anyhow, it's going to take a big team effort, and I'm wondering how you're thinking of proceeding on all that you've uncovered here. You've opened the Pandora's box of grants. Now, how do we proceed?
Bill, this is a basic educational thing. I don't know, from my perspective, it seems like 75% of the people in Lincoln County think it's the government's job to do these things, and it's not my job. So we need to get those people involved. We need to get them loving their community more than they are right now. And it's now we're perhaps coming to the conclusion with COVID, or at least the worst parts of it, and maybe we can get people involved and to meetings and that, and get a little bit of enthusiasm out of them for their communities. Because, when that big earthquake comes, or when the big tsunami comes, we're going to be islands. And if we don't know how to grow our own food, or to gather water, or to just basically take care of one another, we're up the creek without a paddle.
Yeah. Martin actually brought up the same thing in regards to all the industries that are, rely on natural resources. Where are the fishermen talking? They should be, and the foresters and the farmers, they should be right here before us. It's their whole livelihood, and they're like giving us a hard time, or pushing back, or no. So it's time that they, I think, come on board, and maybe Casey can come up with a compelling letter to send out to everybody.
Well, but I mean, part of it, Bill, is they don't have capacity either. They don't have a grant writer. Now, I will say that, and it's still in draft form, so I need to review it before I send it out. But the study I just paid for, working with local farmers on what they need for adaptation and stuff to climate change, is really interesting. And there's definitely some things in there that were surprising, but also, needs grant funds, like more mobile processing of animals. Didn't think that was going to be on my list of things, but they make very compelling reasons that why that's needed with climate change, because they have to rely on more local markets to get their thing to product, and the local butchering shops we have can't keep up. So that's not a connection, I would have made, and really the need to have almost like a co-op USDA approved facility. So anyway, it's just an example of, I think they are starting to get engaged when they're asked, and we do have a nice document when it's done, draft form, that I'll share, and that does lay out very specific things that our land-based ag group really kind of needs help with and advocacy on, in terms of
what about
what would help.
what about extension people? You know, we have the extension who does the Master Gardeners program.
That's who I paid to do the study.
Well, they've become a little bit elitist because they charge for people to be part of the Master Gardener program. And I know they give out grants for those that can't afford it, but it's also at a time of the week where a lot of people are working. And so local people need to have the tools. They need to learn how to cook. They need to learn how to plant. They need to understand seeing the seeds grow and how long it'll take and all that sort of stuff. And I'm sorry, I don't have the answers. I'm just bringing the problems to the table. But it seems like education, you know, the adults in Lincoln County need to be educated better so they can teach their children who will hopefully in the future be able to take care.
The extension does have a lot of wonderful educational things that are online. People just need to know about them and sign up, and they even send you package of seeds, and I you know, in some ways they might have problems, but I think they're really out there, especially with the immigrant population too.
So anyways, so people are starting to raise their hands. They're actually much more polite than other folks like myself. So anyways, I think Casey, you were the first one to raise your hand, and so we'll go Casey, Evan, and then Rala. So Casey, you're up.
June, are you suggesting I shut off Netflix and actually go work in the garden?
Yes, why not?
Okay,
it's a wonderful feeling, and especially in the summertime. It's raining right now, so it's a little bit messy, but it's fun. I had my grandchildren here about a week ago, and they had never made scones. And so I found the simplest recipe, and I had these 3 little boys with their hands in a bowl full of flour, having a blast. And that's what we need.
Yeah, well, good for you. To the group, to our wisdom here, and just when we started, I did some pre-research, and I noticed that Biden, there was some news that he might compartmentalize, build back better in the state address tonight. But do you guys, is this likely stable moving forward, say if administration switched? Just kind of a functional question. Do we have any sense of that at all? I just was kind of wondering if anyone might know that.
Well, actually, Casey, these grants are coming out through the bipartisan infrastructure law bill, the BIL, that's passed. And so I mean, future administrations can sort of think around with eligibility and so forth and so on. But this is actually this is money that Congress has appropriated, and so a lot of this is, I mean, this is really what's going to happen, for the next couple of years. So that's
good.
Yeah,
that's good. And I guess my thought would be, it feels like we almost need maybe an interjurisdictional partnership, if we're looking at it from a governmental perspective, to where we all pitched in possibly on a community and capacity building position. I mean, maybe that's just one thought, but I agree. I think we almost need, a lead person at some level that could at least make sure we're all buying into something of this nature. So Katie, she's got it pretty dialed in. So now I know she does work hard herself on these things and is a great example of really this working elected official to make this stuff happen. But you guys, I think we need to get some buy-in and, approach it coordinated effort. I can't imagine this really getting the synergy we need if we don't get that kind of buy-in. So thank you.
Thanks, Casey. Evan, I think you were next with your hand raised.
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to say that. So we Midcoast hosts a monthly tech team meeting. We get all the agency, state, federal folks who can. It's a way we kind of vet our projects through the community and get input on our projects and anything going on. And I'll just put a plug in now that that's open to everybody. That's not just Midcoast project. So if anyone's looking to kind of discuss stuff with a team of folks to get some ideas or brainstorming, let me know and we can get you on the agenda. But we discussed this kind of just fire hose of grants essentially at our last meeting and kind of resolved to make essentially form a loose subcommittee of our tech team to kind of try to meet, every couple of weeks maybe while this is kind of crazy with all these grants, and hopefully try to divide up the labor as far as grant writing and implementation of this stuff between our groups. So I know Margaret and Shannon, who are on the call, are both kind of on board for that. And Martin, your name came up as someone to include in that group too. So consider yourself invited, and everyone, if you're interested, let me know. And obviously a lot of our stuff will be kind of that watershed restoration and, function kind of angle. But I think any group that's interested in working with us to kind of break up, division of labor of some of this stuff and prioritizing which we have the best shot at, please contact me. I'll put my email in the chat if anyone wants to shoot me an email, and we'll add you to our list of this newly formed rough subcommittee of our tech team.
Let's see, Rala?
Yes, this is a question probably for Katie maybe, but I was just curious. I've never really dealt with grants much, and I was curious whether it would ever be practical for the county to retain a manager of grants of sorts who responsibility it was to constantly do what you've kind of done here, Martin, is dig up all the grant possibilities you can find and then make sure they're distributed to the right organizations or where it might have a chance of getting done. And then, I don't know, maybe you can even pay them on commissions. I don't know if that ever works or is ever done or not, but it just seems like if it's not somebody's job, it's unlikely to have the energy to keep going.
Yeah, I'll answer that. So, I mean, there's a kind of, yes, we kind of do. So one existing resource is the Lincoln County Economic Development Alliance. And I didn't have Paul go through all these because initially we were really kind of looking for kind of more green stuff, I guess, which is why I kind of asked Martin, but Paul certainly could have. And he's funded by both cities and some other entities as well. So economic development could have probably gone through that. Paul probably could have done that. Paul can write some stuff, but again, that would kind of be for his own organization. What I recently did internally, because again, back to what I've said previously, the writing is easy. It's the management of the thing that's difficult. And we just were not able to keep up with both COVID and with wildfire. And so we do now have a 0.8 FTE kind of grants manager in the Board of Commissioners office. 0.2 of her FTE is just kind of general office support, but 0.8 is grants management, and that 0.8 is grant funded. And she's mine, and I really don't share because with other departments, and I know that sounds bad, but there's money that I'm going after specifically for Otis and some other things, whole county things. And I know as soon as I say, use this person for your stuff, then her capacity will be gone. So we do now have at least one person in the BOC office that can go after, like, again, kind of those things that are more general county. I mean, we do have some grants managers inside HHS. And like Roy Kenning, our public works director, he'll manage grants for roads that come in, but we don't have someone to say going after septic system replacements for the whole county and managing that. And now that we have Asia, she can do that. So there is a good partnership there. But at 0.80, there is only so much capacity that she can do before she's tapped in terms of using, grant dollars to pay somebody to manage that. But it usually requires some type of investment up front, to kind of get that going. And how we did that with this particular position is this worker qualified to have her salary paid for 6 months from federal workforce dollars because she was impacted by COVID-19. And so we grabbed her on under that funding source, wrote grants, and then by 6 months we had that money in hand to do that. So yes, I mean, I think that that's a model that probably other cities and jurisdictions need to kind of look at too. And I was grant funded for 17 years with Oregon Sea Grant. So to me, being grant funded isn't scary like maybe it is for other people. Although because I write the grants that fund Asia, she's very adamant that I have time on my schedule to write grants because otherwise she doesn't have a job. So she's very good at making sure that I am looking at that for her. Anyways, the 2 comments I wanted to say, one back to Bill's question kind of about what here from now. I mean, I think we probably all need to take some of these back to our collective jurisdictions and think about capacity and what we're interested in. There's kind of the transportation piece that I need to talk to Roy Kenyon about and see if he has some planning projects and stuff. There's also some water stuff that might coincide nicely with some other things we got going on. But then just in terms of like broader next steps, I mean, I think that something's really helpful back when I used to work for the university and wrote a lot of grants as a team, is we had a lot of just shared stuff that we created together. So all of that data, all of the census data, all of the information kind of on the county or on the coast, or just the statistics or the general organizational write-ups, like tell me about your county. You know, we would write that stuff and just share it with each other so that the next time you could just steal it. And so even though you still have to create that content of what is this grant and what are you doing, you know, I'd be able to go into Evans and steal all his data on what he uses to talk about the number of acres and forests in Lincoln County and not have to like find that on my own. So that kind of stuff can be really helpful because sometimes you can just cut, copy, and paste and save yourself a lot of work. And even when you're contracting a grant writer that's say from Corvallis or wherever, you're paying them to go find that. And so you can say, well, go steal this out of this shared folder. So just some general sharing, I think, is really helpful, you know, and can be just on a way to kind of go forward. And I think that's kind of what Casey was talking about, is kind of this shared group, but even just in volunteers. And I feel like we do have a lot of really good grant writers in the community that are maybe kind of quiet, but I feel like if there were, you know, something that they cared about or we asked specifically for them to do, they probably would come out on their own time and help us write it, as long as there was capacity internally to carry it. But Tracy Cruz is a great one who lives in Yachats, who works for Oregon Sea Grant. Let's put her on the spot, but there's several other ones kind of hiding that are very good. The other thing I wanted to say is, I think it was Casey's questions about just, you know, the stability of funding and if these things will still be here. And I don't know, I mean, exactly if how long these exact programs will be here, but I guess just to share the way I think about this, and this is kind of knowledge that an old mentor of mine, Jay Rasmussen, I don't know if any of you knew Jay, would always share, is he really felt like from a federal and state funding perspective that there was times, as Jay would say, where the faucets turned on for certain things. People care about water or whatever it is. Right now, the federal government and state government cares about this thing, and you better be ready to grab as much of that as you can. But at the same time, you better be thinking ahead about what they're going to care about next and be framing yourself up so that when this faucet turns off and this one turns on, you're thinking forward. And right now, I really feel like it's infrastructure that the federal government is caring about. And at some point, that faucet's going to shut. And, you know, the trick is lining yourself up to be ready for the next thing. And I feel like, unfortunately, I don't feel like our community as a whole was necessarily ready for as much of the infrastructure and water resources that were coming. We're doing pretty good. But again, I feel like if we can think forward and be more ready for the next thing that comes, I think that would set us up better, especially because a lot of the projects right now have to be shovel ready. And we just didn't have as many shovel ready projects as it would have been nice to. So there's my 2 cents.
So it's 7:02, and those of you who know me know I'm pretty ruthless about time. And so what I'd like to suggest is just sort of building upon this is, just setting up another, I'll just sort of refer to it as, just another community dialogue on this in like another 2 weeks or so. And, just sort of continuing to reach out. And I'm recording this. I'm going to post it up on YouTube because there's a number of people that wanted to attend, but they were either at the Newport or Depot Bay or more interested in the State of the Union speech, whatever though. So, anyways, probably, I don't know, maybe like in another 2 weeks or so. Does anybody have are there any more State of the Union speeches coming up in 2 weeks' time? So I think the key thing though is just really just sort of, working together, identifying projects, bringing in people, because a number of you have identified a number of people here, and I think this to me is just sort of drawing lines between different people, different resources, and so forth and so on. And just what Katie was talking about is right now there's this tremendous amount of money that's flowing through this bipartisan infrastructure law, and so if we can just sort of figure out a way to get funds from some of these grants, I mean, I think we can really boost both the economy here in the county, as well as better protecting the environment though. So anyways, just sort of looking at, actually, I'm going to be, my wife's hauling me out to Cajun music in Louisiana a couple of weeks though, but that's all right though. But I don't know, maybe 2 weeks from now, can't be on the 15th or the 16th, but maybe the 14th or the 17th. That'd be like Monday the 14th or Thursday the 17th. Anybody have any?
Sounds good now.
Okay, yeah. Life always intrudes. What-
17th, St. Patrick's Day.
Oh,
That makes, I know that may mean that June is going to be in Ireland or something like that. Or with the little people.
I'll be
So-
unavailable that day.
Oh, okay. So I guess it's the 13th.
That day actually does work for me, as does earlier in the week, but that Friday and then the following week, I should be in Germany seeing my son who's in the military, who I haven't seen in 2 years, but Putin may have other plans for him. So, but I'm still keeping that week blocked. So that week would be good, but not the one after.
At the 14th then.
Yeah, I leave whatever that Friday is after St. Patty's, 18th. That's the day we're
18th.
supposed to leave before spring break. Like I said, all of that's a little up in the air right now, but I'm keeping it open in case he's still in Germany.
Let's do the 14th then. Sounds like that would work.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. And I'll be drafting up a news release with a link to the Zoom meeting, and please feel free to invite other people, and actually that news release will also have a link for the YouTube. So appreciate everybody's time. Have a good night.
all right. Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Bye-bye.
Martin.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Martin.
Yeah,
Thanks, Martin.
we'll see ya.
Good work.